All right, welcome to our second class on, we're going to call these classes Mystical Awakenings. And this class is called our Unconscious Creation, the Dark Matrix of Limitation and Pain. And again, my name is Susan Vaughn, and with me is my wonderful sidekick, Yvette. You want to introduce yourself, Yvette?
Yes, my name is Yvette Esquilo. I met Susan off looking for a therapist, and now we're hosting these classes together and sharing it with whoever it resonates with, and hoping that it can inspire people to take control of their lives and make their mindset more positive.
Right. These are classes that I've taught for about 30 years. I've learned a lot of the information from the channel being Lazarus, and also from my constant reading of A Course in Miracles. And as far as I know, there's nothing else like it on the planet. So I hope you enjoy. So the dark matrix of limitation and pain. For many people that I've taught these classes to for years and years, when we get to the second class, they say, wow, that wasn't a very fun class, because we're having to look at all the things that we are thinking and doing that are causing us to create a dark reality or unpleasantness to occur in our lives. But this is the most important thing that we need to learn in reality creation, because as you know, if you don't understand how you're creating something, you can't possibly do it differently. And so that's why this class is so important. So reality is created from 4 levels of the mind. It's created from the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the higher conscious mind. Your conscious mind, which is what we're all familiar with, your conscious mind is what you're using to watch this video. Your conscious mind is what helps you become aware of everything that's in your current environment. It's how you remember the grocery list. It's how you remember where you need to be when, what time those appointments are, what you need to be focusing your attention on. All of these things are in the conscious mind. And all of your religious, scientific, and secular beliefs that you've worked out consciously are in the conscious mind. Your subconscious mind consists of all your programming from this one lifetime. So it consists of all the things you were taught in childhood, but you're just not aware of anymore. Their subconscious means underneath the surface of your conscious mind. The unconscious mind consists of all of your past lives and all of the lifetimes in between, or all of your experiences in between. So of those 3 levels, which one is going to be the biggest? The conscious mind, the subconscious mind, or the unconscious mind?
Would it be the unconscious?
The unconscious mind is far bigger than the conscious mind. And of those 3, the conscious mind is the tiniest aspect. Now there is one more level that we create from, and that's the higher conscious mind. And the higher conscious mind consists of everything related to your higher consciousness. And how much are people aware of that is in their higher consciousness? For most people, almost nothing.
Right.
Yeah. However, that's also far bigger than your unconscious mind, but we have no memory of that whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to use the metaphor of an ocean. So when you're flying in an airplane over the ocean and you're looking down, and all you can see is ocean everywhere you look, everywhere in front of you, everywhere behind you, everywhere to the side of you, that's all you can see is ocean. That would be like the conscious mind, the surface of the ocean. Now, if you were to stand up close to the ocean, say you're in a place that has beautiful clear water, you might be able to see 2 or 3 feet into that water. But if you're in a place where it's really cloudy, you're going to only be able to see 2 or 3 inches. Well, that's like the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, again, consists of all of your childhood programming. So most people are not able to reflect on their childhood programming because they're not used to doing this thing called reflection. They don't know what's in there. So in order to begin the process of healing, we have to begin reflecting upon the things that we were taught in childhood. And that takes a lot more work than looking at what's in your conscious mind, because those are the things you're consciously aware of. Now, so if the conscious mind is like the surface of the ocean, and the unconscious or the subconscious mind is everything that you can see just under the surface, well, that still leaves a lot more water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the unconscious mind would be all the rest of the water that's underneath the surface and underneath the either from 2 inches to a couple of feet. So that's how big the unconscious mind is in comparison to your conscious mind. Now, my spiritual teacher, Lazar, says we create 99.9% of our reality from the unconscious mind, not from the conscious mind, but from the unconscious mind. So we create the vast majority of our beliefs, of our reality, from beliefs that we don't even know we have.
Mm.
That's gigantic. And these beliefs are brought with us from other lifetimes. So when you actually begin to think about that, that's ginormous. And there are aspects of our lives that we create from the higher conscious mind, but I'll get into that in later classes. I'm not going to be talking about that in this one. So the unconscious mind consists of everything that we've ignored in past lives. Like, I don't want to look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that we've denied, things that are true that we've denied, right? Everything that we've minimized, well, I know it's a problem, but it's not a very big problem, right? And everything that we've discounted, well, it doesn't really matter, right? And so those are the things that are running around in our unconscious mind that need to be brought to the surface of the conscious mind so that we can actually take a look at them and make a better decision about them. So if we've been ignoring something lifetime to lifetime to lifetime, and it comes up again, it behooves us to really take a look at it. Like if you believe that men are superior to women in lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, and you're a man in this lifetime, well, you may have an unconscious belief that you're entitled to certain privileges that women aren't entitled to, right? And if you were a woman in all of those lifetimes being taught that you were inferior to a man, well, you might come in with an unconscious belief that as a female, I'm inferior. I should give my power away to my husband or my male partner or whatever. Right? So those are just examples of the kinds of things that are held in the unconscious mind that affect this lifetime, whether you've been taught that or not. Okay, but you're carrying it around with you in the unconscious. So this lifetime is just a recreation of other lifetimes. So all your lifetimes are different forms of the same problem. And when we change time and space and history, of course, everything changes on the surface. But how much changes in content?
Probably not much.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot. We're constantly dealing with things that we have brought forward from other lifetimes. Lazar says that it's inventory that we shoved under the carpet in that last lifetime. Yeah. And it has to be dealt with, because if you don't deal with it, every time you walk over that lump in the carpet, you trip. Right? And so it comes up again in this lifetime, but it comes up in a brand new form, unrecognizable to us. since we've forgotten everything basically from those other lifetimes, and in order to give us another opportunity to change our minds about them.
Mm.
All it's about. It's always when our challenges come up, we are always being given yet another opportunity to see things differently, to change our attitude about it, to change the way we behave around it, to act in a more authentic way.
Right.
And you'd think this wouldn't be that hard, but it's really, really difficult to do when you're carrying these unconscious beliefs. Because, like I talked about in the first place, unconscious beliefs are a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember why?
Well, they're really hard to recognize.
Yes, because number one, we don't even know we have them,
Right. Yeah.
right? And number two, they're most likely erroneous,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're acting on beliefs you don't know you have that cause you to behave in a non-productive way.
Yeah. And it's
And
hard to recognize them, especially when, you haven't even been through anything in this life to justify that belief. So you don't really know where it came from. So therefore you think, oh, that's just how it is because that's always how it's been since I was born.
yes, exactly. And so those beliefs, so that's what these classes are all about. They're about helping you raise your perceptions into higher consciousness. So we're like walking through the forest, and it's really hard to see the pathway because all the trees and rocks and everything look kind of the same.
Mm-hmm.
But when you rise up above that forest, you can easily see, oh yeah, the path's over there. Turn right and go in that direction.
Yeah.
So that's what these classes are about. They're about helping you to see your physical experience of life very, very differently. From last week's class, we talked about how being physical is a method of evolution, and it's the method that our consciousness chose to evolve itself. So these classes help kind of give you the map,
Mm-hmm.
help you see your life differently, because if you don't have the map, you don't even know where to look.
Right. Yeah.
Find it. So the unconscious mind is vast and enormously complicated, right? It's like really, really complex. And so because of that, you can't focus your attention on all aspects of the unconscious mind in every lifetime. So what we do is we choose certain aspects of the unconscious mind to focus on this lifetime. So, for example, you might create a life in which you're going to focus your attention on forgiveness. Like, what is forgiveness? How do I do it? What are the steps? And so forth and so on. Well, in order to create a lifetime that's focused on forgiveness, well, you will create an incident in this lifetime that's unforgivable. That you cannot forgive. And so in order to heal, grievances are a burden. And when you carry grievances, it's a burden, and it takes up a lot of psychic energy to carry grievances. And when you carry that burden, you don't have the energy to create something more positive. So that's one of the things that you begin to learn when you evolve into higher consciousness. So you got this lifetime coming to you from the unconscious mind, something someone you haven't been able to forgive in a past lifetime. And guess what? You'll bring that forward into this lifetime and create a different form of the same problem. And voila, you've got another thing that you need to forgive, another person that you need to forgive, another aspect of that of your reality that you need to forgive. And so then you go on a spiritual journey, and then you learn, well, how do I forgive? I mean, I can say the words I forgive, but until it's no longer a burden to you, you haven't forgiven. So then there's steps you have to learn in order to forgive. And that's what the process of evolution is all about. So we're always creating different forms of problems we've had in the past that didn't end in love. We're bringing that with us into this lifetime to create another solution, to resolve the issue, to come to forgiveness, to let it resolve in love, right? And then we're done with it. We don't have to recreate it anymore. So in each lifetime, before we come into body, we work with our guides to determine, okay, what is it I'm going to work on in this lifetime. So I use the example of this lifetime is about going to be about me learning how to forgive. Well, maybe another lifetime is going to be about me learning what power is and what misuse of power is.
Mm,
Another lifetime may be all about learning how, you might start out impoverished and your goal is how do I create a, a, a good way to make a living,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
Okay, so we're always working on different things in every lifetime because you can't work on everything in one lifetime. That's impossible.
yeah,
By choosing your genetics, your parents, your culture, your religion, and your environment, you and your soul create the curriculum for your learning and growth.
mm,
That's how we do it here. You incarnate to certain parents who are going to teach you certain things, many of which may be erroneous,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
That you're going to have to outgrow.
mhm,
You may incarnate into parents who abuse you.
mhm,
And that could be because in a past lifetime, they abused you and you never could forgive them. And you might have created a belief about yourself that I'm no good, I must deserve this abuse,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
You may have been taught that. And so you'll incarnate in again with them again, this time into a brand new lifetime, into a brand new form, in
mhm,
order to learn how to forgive the unforgivable and in order to gain your self-esteem, realizing I did nothing to deserve this. This was not my issue.
mhm,
And the fact that I was taught that I'm no good and can't do anything right by parents who aren't able to love me, that's not my issue,
yeah,
right? And so that takes a lot of learning
yeah,
because this gets implanted into the subconscious mind when we're children.
mhm, yeah,
And when we are born, let me talk about that a little bit. When we're born, um, we have all these neural pathways in the brain, but they don't lead anywhere. They're just like a mishmash. All these neural pathways go, just every which direction. And
mm,
as you um, mature, as you interact with your parent, is holding you in their arms and they're talking to you and giving you certain life experiences. Well, in time, those neural pathways connect together. They wire together.
mhm,
And neurons that wire together and fire together become your reality. And that neural pathway becomes a complete thought. And in the beginning stages, of course, you're learning to speak. You're
mhm,
learning what all those odd sounds are that your parents and what do they mean. Then you're learning to gain control of your arms and legs and to, grow up and eventually dress yourself and do all those kinds of things. So that's that is the result of these neurons wiring together, your parents telling you the same thing over and over again and helping you put on your clothes over and over again. This arm goes into this slot and this, and that brain is
mhm,
wiring itself in a meaningful way. And the first 6 years are called the formative years. And that's when we're giving thousands and thousands of messages by our parents related to do this, don't do that. Um, behave like this, don't behave like that. So those are the years that we're given all these messages about how to behave in
mhm,
the world.
yeah,
And then we become adolescents and, and then we grow up and we still carry that with us, right? And behave in accordance to those subconscious beliefs,
mhm,
right? And it's not until we can unearth those unconscious beliefs from the subconscious and say, do I really believe this? I mean,
yeah.
this might have worked for me when I was, 6, but does it work for me now?
Yeah, and especially nowadays with a lot of social media and especially just when you grow up and when you go to, you meet different kids and you go to other kids' houses and you see how their parents act and their lifestyles and you kind of start to unlearn certain things that you thought were the only way when they were modeled by your parents. it's so different, and you think when you're a kid, you're like, "Oh, this is the only way because this is the way that my parents act with me." And then when you kind of see other kids and it's completely different from how you were raised, you're like, "Is that okay? Can I do that?"
Right.
It's
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And so if you're growing up, this is such a great example that you brought up, because if you're growing up in a family where you're always putting things away because that's what you've been taught, and you get together with a partner and it's just a big mess and never puts
Mhm.
anything away, well,
Yeah.
then we got a big mess on our hands, right?
Yeah.
Because eventually you're going to become really resentful.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then because you're going to nag the partner, they're going to become really resentful,
Yeah.
right? So that's how these problems get created.
Mhm.
So when we evolve consciously, our growth into higher consciousness really accelerates. You
Mhm.
can you can do everything you need to do to evolve off the planet in one lifetime,
Mhm.
basically. When you evolve unconsciously, it could take thousands and thousands of years
Yeah.
to evolve off the planet. And we live on a planet that resonates by and large to victim consciousness.
Mhm.
And victims attract persecutors, and victims attract other victims. And those victims think you're the persecutor, and you think they're the persecutor.
Mhm.
You're blaming each other. Neither person is taking responsibility, and
Yeah.
nothing changes, right? So
Right.
that goes on lifetime after lifetime after lifetime
Yeah. And
until you,
especially hard to evolve, especially, I mean, we were talking about in the last class that, birds of a feather flock together. You stick with people that you resonate with. And especially when if you're in a lower vibration, you're going to attract lower vibrational people. So
right,
that's going to make it even harder to
higher,
elevate higher because you're not attracting higher elevational people. You're attracting these people who want to keep you in that same vibrational energy, and it's really hard to get out of that unless you realize it.
exactly. And I'm of the opinion that you don't evolve out of the vibration that you're in unless you have some kind of a teacher or mentor,
Mhm. Yeah.
which is why, certain people go to church and they get that kind of higher education there about, this is what right behavior is,
Mhm.
right? And we don't teach that in our society. The media doesn't teach that anymore.
Mhm.
Um, and it doesn't, you don't have to be going to a person. It could also be a book that
Mhm.
is teaching you something, or even a video. Today, there's so many people online on YouTube that are teaching people how to understand themselves and how to evolve beyond their present level of understanding. But it has to be, so that's what the spiritual journey is about, right? I am a seeker of conscious evolution.
Yeah.
When you're not seeking evolution, you don't evolve.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
pretty much going to stay at the level that you're at.
Right.
So the beliefs in your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your unconscious mind, and your higher conscious mind determines your frequency,
Mhm.
and thus what you attract into your life. And the largest, as I said before, is unconscious.
Mhm.
So again, if you're unconscious of it, you can't question it.
Yeah.
It's just there. And if it's leading you astray, you don't understand why you're going astray,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So that's the difficulty. So to heal ourselves, we have to reprogram our minds with conscious beliefs. We have to understand what higher consciousness is. We have to understand what victim consciousness is. It's like you have to, in these classes, you will be putting victim consciousness under a microscope and looking at every aspect of victim consciousness.
Yeah.
And so, and the reason why this is important is that in order to notice yourself when you're falling into that victim consciousness, you have to go, oh, I'm doing that thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
If you can't do that, you're not going to notice. It's going
Mhm.
to be like it's invisible to you.
Yeah.
You can't validate your partner when they're pointing it out. I mean, or you're in total denial of it, right?
Mhm.
And then nothing ever changes. So now we're going to start talking about the dark matrix of limitation and pain. That was just kind of a little overview of the 4 levels of the mind.
Mhm.
And in childhood is when we create the dark matrix of limitation and pain, which can be thought of as our karma. And so the first thing that is in the dark matrix of limitation and pain is what's called your chemical and mechanical limitations. So all of us are born with a certain set of genes. And sometimes our genes are really helpful to us, and sometimes they're just not,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So you can be born a beautiful woman. And if you're beautiful, you are going to be sought after.
Mhm.
And that's going to give you certain advantages in life,
Mhm.
but it's also going to give you certain disadvantages in life because there's going to be guys that are going to want to take advantage of you,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
And also, if you're a really beautiful woman, you're going to attract the jealousy
Mhm.
of other women. That's
Mhm.
going to cause you problems, right? Um, if you're born unattractive, you're kind of not, you're kind of plain, not very attractive. Well, that's going to be a great disadvantage
Mhm.
because you'll be passed over just because people don't like your looks.
Yeah.
In adolescence, what happens when kids are unattractive when they're adolescents? You just came out of that phase.
Yeah. Well, especially they have low self-esteem. Bully you, make fun of you, and
Yes,
bully
exactly.
you. Yeah.
Right. And really give you a self-esteem problem.
Yeah. I mean, they point out every single flaw that's
Every,
wrong with you physically.
that's right.
Yeah.
And and that doesn't just go away when you grow up. That your inner dialogue is always one, I'm no good.
Mhm.
I'm not attractive. No one will ever love me. It
Mhm.
starts this whole train of thoughts inside of you that
Yeah.
become a vibrating, resonating belief system
Mhm.
that attracts life experience to you.
Right.
And when you're adolescents, you don't. I mean, you don't know what to do, and even in childhood, you can have an abusive parents that are always emotionally raging, if not also physically raging. And again, you take that on. I must have done something wrong. Your parents always blaming you for everything, even though you're just a kid and
Yeah.
don't know any better. But you still take that on.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you're a kid, you can't see a bigger picture. You just see things very tunnel vision. And, if they're saying it's my fault, especially your parents, I mean, you kind of idolize your parents when you're a little kid. And, if they say that this is something, oh, then that must be true. And then it
Exactly.
internalizes and it sticks with you until you can get over that when you're an adult.
Yes, exactly. If you ever do.
Yeah. Hopefully, but not
You
always.
get over it when you go on your spiritual journey. That doesn't mean you're following a religion or anything. The spiritual journey has to do with love and power, right? So
Yeah.
once you begin that journey to understand yourself, know thyself, there's nothing else really to know,
Hmm.
um, then you begin the process of healing yourself. There's no healing outside of that.
Yeah.
So there's other things that you could be born with that's not even that visible. Like you could be born with a really high IQ
Hmm.
and a really low EQ. EQ is emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
You could be born really smart intellectually, but have no emotional intelligence whatsoever.
Yeah.
Or you could be born with a lot of emotional intelligence, but not that high of an IQ,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
who tends to excel in our school system?
People with a high IQ, but not, I mean, they don't have to have any
EQ,
form of EQ. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right. So people with a high IQ who can learn things from books,
Mhm.
kinesthetic learners don't do so well. And if you have a high IQ in school, you
Mhm.
tend to do well in school, you pass all the tests, you
Yeah.
don't have to study that much, and you look down on everybody who isn't as smart as you are.
Yeah. And your parents and your teachers and all these other adults are congratulating you, telling you how amazing of a student you are, and but you could be really depressed, but you're really smart, and they think that that's everything.
Right. Or you could be a total asshole,
Yeah.
yeah, you could be a total asshole and a big bully too,
Right.
right? but
Yeah.
they're given all the applause.
Mhm.
And then the person who's, say they're a kinesthetic learner, which
Mhm.
means they don't learn well from books, but they learn, you know, as a result of doing, they're not ever given that applause. And
Right.
so then they develop that belief system, well, I'm no good. This
Mhm.
whole set of limitations. And there's other things that you can get from your genes as well that aren't obvious, and that is certain metabolic disorders.
Mhm.
That and some of these disorders you will see immediately, like Down syndrome or autism or things like that, which come with their own sets of limitations. But
Mhm.
some of these disorders may not even show up until later on in life.
Mhm.
You can also have something called nutrient dependence, which means that for you, what most people would call normal, this is the normal level of vitamin A, normal level of vitamin C, and so forth. But for you, your body doesn't absorb that nutrient very well. So you need 10 times that amount in order to function normally. If you don't know that, you're not going to know why you're always feeling unhealthy and unwell.
Mhm.
And that's going to affect you.
Yeah.
So there's all these things that we can be born with that we're never going to get rid of, because you're not suddenly going to become beautiful. If you're not beautiful, you're not suddenly going to be develop an IQ of 130 when it's 100. That's
Mhm.
probably not going to happen. You're kind of stuck with what you've got, and you bring those things in with you when
Mhm.
you're born.
Yeah.
And all you can do is to begin to understand this dynamic and develop a good attitude about it and decide to overcome what you can overcome.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, and a lot of it is strengthening what you're good at. I feel like
yes.
a lot of times they're like, "Oh, well, you just need to study more. You need to do this more," but they don't try to strengthen what they're actually good at. Um, and then it can cause a lot of self-esteem issues if the kid feels like, "Oh, well, I'm not good at this, but I'm really good at this. Oh, but this isn't what is needed, and this isn't what's glorified in society or by my parents or by other adults. So let me just not work on that at all. Let me just work on something that I'm horrible at in hopes that I'll be
Right.
good at it." And most
Right.
of the times
Right.
not.
And this is another thing that happens in our school system is they don't teach you how to get in touch with your talents and strengths.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's like totally ignored. We don't
Yeah.
care about what your talents and strengths are. Just, take this math class, you
Hmm.
know, do
Yeah.
these history lessons,
Mhm.
whatever. And then you graduate from school and you go, I don't know who I am. I don't have any talents. I don't know what's good about me, which
Mhm.
is terrible,
Yeah.
because then you just go out into the workforce and get a job that you don't enjoy
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
you don't know what to do about it.
Yeah, and most people feel unfulfilled for the rest of their life, and
That's exactly right.
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, this is a combination of things that you're born with, plus the way the culture treats you if you're born with those things.
Mhm.
You know, dyslexia is another thing that you can be born with. That's where you see your letters backwards and stuff.
Mhm.
And it used to be they didn't know hardly anything about dyslexia, and you were just thought of as being retarded because you couldn't read.
Yeah.
They didn't know that it took special techniques to teach that kind of child to read.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, people even with dyslexia or special needs, they like you need to teach them differently. You need to approach teaching them in a different way than what you would teach
Hmm.
general students. I mean, even, there's visual learners, there's hands-on learners, there's so many different type of learners. Maybe people with like ADHD, they can't sit there and listen to somebody talk for an hour, sit in front of a book and for an hour.
Right.
It's hard. You need to approach learning differently, and it's kind of just a cookie cutter way of learning, and if you don't get it, well, then you're retarded and you can't learn, and
Exactly.
it's not the right way to teach people.
And I would say that the majority of people do not learn well by reading a book.
Right. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, especially if it's a book that you have no business
I'm an
understanding.
experiencer. I'm
Yeah.
experienced things to learn. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and textbooks are written in the most dry way, so there's no soul in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
You're expected to get through all those words, it's like, oh my
Yeah, it's like reading an encyclopedia. It's like like, where's the pictures? I need
God,
some
right,
entertainment, keep me,
right.
wanting to read.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that's in the dark matrix of limitation and pain. It's things that you bring in with you, and then because you're not of the norm that our culture likes, it
Mhm.
gives you problems.
Right.
So the second thing in the dark matrix of limitation and pain is called our negative scripts. And negative scripts are created in childhood. And when you're little, you are under the control of your parents. And I'll tell you, right from the get-go, we all create our own reality and we want to do it our way. We do
Mm,
not want somebody telling us what to do. Even when you're 2 years old, you do not like that.
yeah.
Don't tell me what to do. And
Mhm.
so you create a negative script. And so we create these negative scripts throughout childhood and adolescence. And it's the way we get what we want without being authentic. And the way a 2-year-old does a negative script is really simple. They just throw a tantrum,
Mhm. Yeah.
screaming and yelling. And
Mhm.
if you're an unwise parent, you give in to this,
Mhm.
which just teaches them to do it more. Um,
Mhm.
but but as we grow, we evolve in sophistication because most of us outgrow the tantrum phase,
Yeah.
and then we figure out new ways to get what we want. And I made up a lot of this list that I'm going to share with you from things I used to do
Mhm.
as a child. And then as I've taught these class over the years, my students have said, well, I did this.
Mhm.
Okay. And so that's how we got to this negative scripts. But as I go through this list, it's really important that you pay attention to the ones that you did or still do.
Mhm.
Because again, these negative scripts are only outgrown by becoming a conscious, knowledgeable adult
Mm.
who can look down on their life from that higher perspective and go, I think I'm behaving like a child.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, these negative scripts help you get what you want.
Mhm.
And if you find advantage in behaving in this way, there's no reason for you to have a higher perspective.
Mhm. Yeah.
Keep on doing it.
Mhm.
So here's one that I did a lot is I would just say one thing and do another.
Mm.
Did you know anyone like that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a very common one. A lot of people I grew up with, even as a child and as an adult, I feel like a lot of people do that.
Yes, that's
Mhm.
what I mean. You don't outgrow them just because you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with it.
Mhm.
Um, Here's another one I've done as well. Exaggerate some aspects of an argument while minimizing other aspects.
Oh, yeah, I've done that one. Okay.
Yes, okay. Um, so you're saying whatever suits your purpose and omitting what doesn't suit your purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I think almost everybody does that one.
Yes, but it's a negative script
Right.
because it's not an authentic way
Mhm.
to get what you need.
Yeah.
So here's another one. Conveniently screen out of your awareness what you don't want to hear, think about, or do.
Mm, yeah.
I'm just not going to notice.
Mhm. Yeah.
And the way little children do this, 'cause I had a daughter that did this.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mom, stop
Yeah.
talking,
Yeah. Yeah.
literally covering the ears. But there's ways to do this without covering your ears at all.
Yeah. I just one in ear out the other.
Yeah, it goes in one ear and out the other. I don't want to notice that I've left my crap all over the house.
Mm,
Don't point it out to me. I don't want to hear it.
right.
So here's another one. Say misleading things are simply outright lie in order to get what you want. And
Mhm.
that includes falsifying science, which
Mm,
there's a lot of going on right now. It
mhm.
includes false advertising. This is a great product. You really have to have it. It's not going to do a single thing that we're telling you it's going to do, but we're not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
Right? So those are adult behaviors, negative script created in childhood, carried on.
Mm,
Feign weakness by claiming you don't know how and you simply aren't capable of learning. Won't you do it for me?
mm. Oh, I know someone that does that.
Yeah. Is it me?
I think my mom does that.
Yeah.
I noticed, like, she told me, at work, for example, she's really bad with computers, and it comes to, like, doing, like, anything when it comes to printing out something. "Oh, I don't know how to do that." Something very simple, you could just sit down, click a few buttons, learn it.
Right.
I don't know how to do that. And I was like, I was like, "Why don't you just learn it?" She's like, I think one time she admitted, "I just don't think that I want to learn how, because then I'll have to have that responsibility, and I
Right.
don't really wanna do that." And I'm like, "Oh, okay.
Exactly.
That's why."
That's exactly right. I
Yeah.
don't want that responsibility, so let's just pretend like
Mm.
I'm not capable.
Yeah. Yeah.
So here's another one we've all done as well. It's called yell louder.
Mm. Yes.
So you're in an argument with someone, the voices start rising, I rise, you rise.
Mhm. Yeah. They think that the louder you are, the more you'll be heard almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, negative script,
Mhm.
but lots of people do it.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Make multiple excuses that come out as counterattacks.
Mm. Yeah.
All right. Okay, you're telling me I have a problem. Well, let me tell you about your problems.
Mm. Yeah.
Let's not focus on the problem that's the problem. Let's focus on your problems.
Yeah. They're like, "Oh, well, since you're bringing up problems, let's bring up all
Yeah,
the other problems that
yeah.
aren't mine."
Or else let's focus on how you're presenting the problem.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Sulk, pout, and feel martyred until you get your way.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm just going to go in my room and sulk. I'm going to give you the silent treatment for eternity. I'm going to act like you don't exist
Mhm. Yeah.
until you get your way. And that's actually giving someone the silent treatment. That's really common. And that is one of the things I used to do a lot of.
Yeah.
Another one, just ignore the situation in hopes that it will go away.
Mhm. Yeah.
I have an alcoholic husband, but he tells me he's going to stop. I
Yeah.
think I'll just ignore this.
Mhm.
Yeah, you've had personal experience with this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing is cheat and steal and then lie about it. That's nothing but a negative script.
Yeah.
Do things behind other people's back.
Mm.
That's a really common one. Guilt tripping.
Mm.
Have
Yeah.
you ever guilt tripped? Or know people
Probably.
who have?
Yeah.
So when you're guilt tripping someone, you're trying to manipulate them into changing their behavior.
Mhm. Yeah.
Find someone weaker than you to manipulate and bully them.
Yeah. I used to do that a lot when I
You
was
did
yeah,
when you're a
actually.
kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to do that a lot. Probably in middle school or high school. Um, find somebody that's not emotionally, especially being, having the emotional development that I had at a young age,
Hmm.
me thinking, "Oh, well, because I can control my emotions and these other people can't, well, then I can just kind of get them to do what I want." And I notice it now too when when I meet people, and they're really nice. I There's like a little, like you have intrusive thoughts. A little voice in my head is like, I can manipulate them. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? That is horrible karma. That's horrible. You don't want to do that to people. But it's
Hmm.
still like you still hear a voice in your head that you can do that. And I'm like,
Hmm.
but I won't,
Right, exactly. So
Yeah.
that's what I mean about you don't just outgrow these things
Right.
till you become conscious that they're not okay.
Yeah.
They're not going to lead you to into loving relationships. They're going to destroy every relationship that you've got.
Yeah.
Okay, another one. Say degrading things, be overly critical, and mean-spirited toward other people.
Mm.
Another negative script. Threaten people with negative consequences. If you don't do this, X,
Mm.
Y, and Z will happen.
Yeah.
And another negative script is you don't walk your talk. You say you're going to do something, you don't do it. You say you're going to show up at a certain time, you don't show up. You say
Yeah.
you're going to call, you don't call. Right? Another negative script. And it's really annoying when people do that.
Yeah, it is. I personally have never done it because I know how annoying it is, but when it's done to me, that's like my worst pet peeve is when people say things and don't do it.
Hmm. And it's a relationship destroyer.
Right. Yeah, because there's no trust. You can't depend on them.
Exactly. So that was the negative scripts created in childhood. And that's not the whole list. I'm sure there's things people have come up with to do that I don't know anything about. So you have to really look at your own manipulative behavior. So that's what you're looking for here. How do I manipulate people? By
Mm.
deceiving them in some way, by manipulating them, by, you know, all these different ways that I just talked about.
Mhm.
Another thing in the dark matrix of limitation is pain, and pain is called the inner demon. And the inner demon is a particular belief system that you get from your family. Okay, so these are things like racism,
Mm.
right? Your parents are racist. They teach you that all Black people are, all white people are, all Asians are, whatever. And
Mhm.
you just take that on because you don't know any better, right?
Right.
And then you go in the world and behave in a way that's derogatory towards certain people. So that would be an inner demon that you got from your family that once you go on a spiritual journey, you got to overcome. You got to say, what's this all about? This is just utterly absurd and ridiculous. Why am I treating these people this way? Why am I even thinking that? Because that's what you were taught.
Mhm.
So another thing is gender preference, right? And this is the gender preference I'm talking about. Well, boys are better than girls,
Mm. Like
right?
sexism.
Which is, yeah, sexism. So that is the world over. Um, Humanity's just kind of waking up for this, but in lots and lots of cultures, this is still true.
Yeah.
Boys are better than girls. We want a boy.
Mm.
We don't want a girl.
Mm-hmm.
They are more valuable for
Yeah.
whatever reason. I never got it.
Yeah.
Homophobia is another one. And if you are uh, born homosexual, living in a religious family that teaches you that homosexuality is the work of the devil,
Mm.
well, then in order for you to live your authentic self, you've got a lot of stuff to overcome. If that's an inner demon inside of you, and it's not so bad anymore, but you know, in past decades, you'd become suicidal almost. You'd be trying to get over your homosexuality and just not being able to do it, you know.
Mhm.
And if you are someone who's been taught that homosexuals are bad, then you would be one of those people that go out and bully homosexuals and do horrible things to them,
Mhm.
thinking that that's your right because these people are, you know, animals or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's another inner demon that our parents give us. Another one has to do with economic superiority or inferiority. And you could be given this belief by your parents because we're rich, because we're famous, because we are better than everyone else. We're smarter than everyone else. We're better. We don't have to care about those low life poor people.
Yeah.
That's a belief system that you can be given. And if you're someone who's more altruistic, who's born into that family, and you want to work in a nonprofit organization helping the poor people, then you have to deal with the ridicule of
Mm.
your family in order to be your authentic self.
Right.
Another one has to do with retribution, holding grievances and getting back at others.
Mm.
And you've all heard of the what is that? The Hatfields and McCoys,
Mm.
right? They're a feuding family that's going to hold those grievances, and someone from one family does something to the other, and they have to go get back at them. You know, it's not a belief system of compassion or forgiveness. It's like I'm going to get back at those people.
Yeah, like revenge.
Yeah, like revenge. You can be given that belief system by your parents.
Mm, yeah.
And once you go on a spiritual journey, you have to tell yourself a higher truth.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
Hmm.
You can also be taught victim consciousness. There are some parents who are so into victim consciousness, blaming, 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 never take responsibility. And that's another way we develop that
Hmm.
later on in life and think that's okay,
Yeah.
is to blame, that there's no other way to do it.
Right.
And then there is the entitlement issues. So
Mm,
you can be taught to believe that you're entitled. Well, I'm a man, I'm entitled to certain privileges. Or
hmm.
I'm rich, I'm entitled to certain privileges.
Yeah.
And once again, that's something that you have to acknowledge, notice. I'm doing that. Is that loving? Is that kind? Is it true?
Mm,
Right? So I'm talking about things that take a lot of inner work
yeah.
to overcome because, again, they're in the subconscious mind. It's what we've been taught is true,
Yeah.
and we don't know how to do it in any other way.
Mm,
So the next thing that's in the dark matrix of limitation and pain, we've all heard about this thing called the matrix, how
hmm.
we're stuck in the matrix.
Yeah.
This is the matrix that I'm talking about that we're stuck in.
Mhm.
Nobody ever says these things.
Yeah.
If you watch the movie, it's all about kickboxing and,
Yeah.
being violent. That's
Yeah.
how you get out of it. But that has nothing to do with it. These are the things. And these are they're like, you're stuck in a spider web. You're just, it's become a pathway in your brain. It's an automatic thought. It's unconscious to you. You don't know you've got it. You're acting on it
Hmm.
without conscious awareness.
Yeah.
So here's another thing that happens. It's called the dark law. And this happens in adolescence. And the first three things I talked about, um, your chemical and mechanical limitations, your negative scripts, and the inner demons, those are given to you in childhood, passed on to you. You're either born with it, as in the case of your genetics, or you're making up the negative script in childhood, or your parents are giving you the inner demon.
Hmm.
The dark law is created in adolescence. And what happens in adolescence, and I'm not going to go into this in this class time, but we have something called a wounding. And during that time of wounding, you're just devastated
Hmm.
that you develop this dark law. I'm no good. I'm not smart enough. I'll never get what I want. I'll always be a failure.
Hmm.
I'll never be happy.
Yeah.
Nothing ever works out for me, right?
Mm,
These are examples of dark laws that people have. I'm unattractive and unlovable. That's the bottom line here, right?
yeah.
And so the the dark law is self-created, and once we begin to say it to ourselves, we say it over and over and over and over again. It becomes an automatic pathway in the brain. So
Yeah.
can you remember what your dark law was?
I don't deserve to follow what I am attracted to, or I don't deserve to, for example, when I started getting into tarot, oh, this is bad. I shouldn't be doing this, or my guilt with my relationship with God, I shouldn't be questioning God. I think I used to tell myself stuff like that and limiting myself to what I was actually being drawn to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good example, actually.
Mm,
My dark law was I'll always be a failure.
mm,
I'll always be a failure, and I had several that kind of congregated around it. I'll never be good enough. I'm never going to figure this out. Yeah, they were all beliefs that took away my motivation to succeed.
yeah.
Right? Because why try if you're going to be a failure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I'm not attractive enough. All these. I mean, they all lead to the same place. So you
Mhm.
can have it like a constellation of them.
Yeah.
And once we create them, well, then they become the cause of everything. So if you're life is full of ups and downs. We've talked about that before, you and I. And if you have a dark law of I never be happy, you never notice the ups,
Mm-hmm.
or you discount the ups.
Yeah.
That's only temporary. It's gonna be a disaster,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that creates a vibration that creates that reality. I'll always be a failure. Well, guess what kind of reality that's going to create?
Yeah. You always will be then.
You always will be. I'll never be good enough. Guess what? You'll never be good enough,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So this is created in adolescence and adolescence is really challenging time in our lives. And you're dealing with other adolescents that are mean spirited and cruel and pointing out all your flaws, and and you're probably not being very nice either.
Yeah.
And it's a very kind of a dark time, and that's when we begin to say these things to ourselves.
Mm.
And they'll devastate your life. Absolutely. They will create a life that looks to you just like that. And even if, say, I should become a success, I would like downplay it,
Mm-hmm.
like, well, it's no one cares about that or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
We find ways to make sure that dark law always works out. You
Mm-hmm.
could be a beautiful woman, but you believe you're unattractive, and if someone says you're beautiful, he goes, oh, they're just making that up just to be nice,
Yeah.
right?
And then in return, I feel like people can be really beautiful, but if they genuinely believe that they're not, they won't treat themselves like they are, and therefore they'll portray an ugly energy, or they'll portray an
Hmm.
ugliness, even physically.
Right, right. You can also have a dark law of I'll never be loved. And
Mhm.
so then you get into a relationship with someone and they say, I love you. And then you say to yourself, well, you don't really know me very well. It won't last very long.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I used to do that one.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I still
I
will.
mean, these are all things that people, you can recognize them in not only yourself, but in other people. If you're close to them, you'll notice what they do.
Mhm.
So the next thing in the dark matrix of limitation and pain is called the bottom line. And the bottom line is a negative energy pattern that you refuse to heal.
Mm.
So it's like you're kind of saying, as you get to know reality creation and you're looking at all these things related to the dark matrix and of limitation and pain, and you'll say, well, I'll heal everything but my need to control. I have to control my environment. I have to control other people in order for me to stay safe. So I will heal everything, but not that. That was sacred to me.
Yeah.
That's a bottom line.
Yeah.
Another bottom line has to do with fear. I'll heal everything but my fear. And this is a terrible world we live in. It is dangerous and unsafe here. How could you even ask me to heal that?
Mhm. Yeah. Or you think that, "Oh, if I heal that, then I won't be safe."
Oh, yeah, that's another one.
Yeah.
Um, Another one is I will heal everything, but I can't heal my loneliness
Mhm.
because I am alone and I am lonely and I'll always be lonely. And that one's sacred to me.
Yeah.
So these are the things, kinds of things that are in the bottom line. Another one is I will heal anything, but I won't heal this feeling that I'm flawed and unfixable.
Mm.
I know I'm flawed. I'm not as good as other people, and I'm not fixable.
No.
And yet all of these are deceptions, right? Every one of them. You don't need to control other people. You
Yeah.
don't need to be afraid. There's dangers in the world, but that doesn't mean you have to attract them.
Yeah.
And of course, you're not flawed. No
Mhm.
one is born a flaw. So then we come to what's called the psychic contracts of pain. And the psychic contracts are created in adolescence, and they're made with people who you have brought with you from other lifetimes. And in fact, you have most likely created the contract in other lifetimes. And the contract is related to your parents and oftentimes related to abuse. And so if you have an abusive parent, say a parent that is either emotionally or physically abusive to you, you might create a contract in which you either become exactly like the offender or do exactly the opposite. I will never be like so and so, but in being the opposite of so and so, you become just like them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or you become just like them. If they're an abuser, you become an abuser.
Yeah.
Another set of contracts is called the abandonment-based contracts, and they include the adult child's the adult child of syndrome, like the adult child of an alcoholic. Do you know what that means? That's somebody that you're always trying to get to love you.
Mm.
And so in order to get them to love you, you're putting up with a lot of bad behavior and basically sacrificing yourself without realizing that um, they are not capable of loving you.
Mm.
Like an alcoholic parent who is behaving badly, spending all the household money on alcohol and not showing up when they're supposed to show up because they're at the bar, or behaving badly, um, abusing you when they're drunk, or what have you, they are not capable
Yeah.
of loving you.
Yeah.
They're not capable of it.
Yeah.
Their emotional growth is way stunted, and they are not capable of showing you the love and affection that you need and deserve
Mm-hmm.
as a child or an adolescent.
Yeah.
Um, but as the child or the adolescent, you may develop a contract in your own mind that says, well, I'm going to do everything I can to please you in
Mm.
hopes that I can manipulate you really
Yeah.
into loving me.
Mm-hmm.
And it never works, does it? Because they're not capable. And what happens then is when you grow up and you get into relationships as an adult, well, you tend to draw to yourself exactly the same kind of parent,
Mm-hmm.
and you tend to behave in exactly the same way,
Yeah.
doing everything to try to please that person who's never going to be pleased with you
Right.
because they can't. They're not capable of that. They haven't yet emotionally evolved into being capable of loving you. Another example is to fulfill the offender's dream instead of your own. So if your parents say, I want you to be a doctor, but
Mm.
I want to be an artist. Well, you give up your dreams in order to fulfill the parent's dream. So that's called an abandonment-based contract.
Mm.
And if you do this lifetime after lifetime, right? And are you ever going to be fulfilled as a doctor?
No.
No, because it's not who you are.
Yeah. It's not your calling.
So if your offender believes you are stupid and no good, you turn out to be just like your offender said you would,
Mm.
because you believe that. I'm
Yeah.
stupid, I'm no good. So I'm just going to fulfill your expectations of me. So there's also something called abusive-based contracts, which is to become an abuser to justify and nobilize the abuse you receive. Well,
Mm.
my parents spanked me, so I don't see why I shouldn't be able to spank my kids.
Yeah.
Or my parents sexually abused me, so I ought to be able to do that to my kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Another abusive-based contract is to deny all your negative feelings, so you will never make your offender angry.
Mm.
And this is when my mom was kind of a rageaholic, and I always acted like nothing was ever wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I never wanted to show any of my feelings,
Yeah.
because that would be even more painful, because it wouldn't have done any good, for one thing.
Yeah.
And the last one is to sacrifice yourself and all your values to your offender and become whatever your offender wants you to be.
Mm.
And this happens in extreme cases of abuse. Another set of contracts are called defensive-based contracts, which are to admit never. Okay, think about if you've ever known anyone like this. I will never admit to you that I am wrong,
Mm.
ever,
Yeah.
even when it's totally obvious.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
if I should be backed into a corner, I will tell you why it had to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, someone like that.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be for like a little bit, and then I realized how dumb it was. Um,
Mhm.
and then I've been with some people who are like that too, and it just it's like being with a child almost.
Right. Yeah. This was my mother. She was totally like this. Just never admit you're wrong. Never say you're sorry.
Mhm.
You're always the wrong one. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And another defensive based contract is to become someone the offender can never be proud of.
Mhm.
And Lazara says this is like cutting off your nose to spite your face. I'll show you. I
Mhm.
will become someone you will never be proud of.
Yeah.
And so you literally wreck your whole life in order to get back at your offender.
Yeah.
So psychic contracts cause hoarding, leaks, and tears in your energy field.
Mhm.
So what happens when you have an offender and you don't ever resolve that relationship? You create out psychic cords that go between you and your offender. And these cords exist outside of time and space, which means that you will stay corded with that person for eternity until you cut the cords.
Mhm.
And that's why people that you are corded to in the past, guess what? You incarnate with them
Mm.
in some relationship. They may be your parent, they may be a sibling, they may be the man or woman you marry, they may be the child that you gave birth to.
Mhm.
So anytime you're in a relationship where there's a lot of conflict and a lot of struggle because one or the other or both of you are doing some kind of abuse,
Mhm.
some kind of psychic contract,
Yeah.
um, you've got a cord with them. And the likelihood that you have reincarnated with them over and over and over and over again in multiple lifetimes is really strong
Mm.
because these cords don't break on their own. The
Mhm.
only way they break is for you to become conscious of the contract, how I'm sacrificing myself to
Mhm.
this person, how I become a clone of this person, or how I chose to do the opposite. And in the long run, ended up becoming an abuser in an entirely different way, different form, but same content.
Yeah.
And so, again, by looking at yourself from a higher perspective, looking down on the forest, you can begin to understand, especially looking at people that you have had problems with, like your dad, or like someone you're in a relationship with right now, what's really going on here. So this person is abusing me, and what am I doing in return? How am I behaving? Am I behaving authentically? Now,
Mm.
when you're a kid, there's nothing you can do about it, right?
Yeah.
But when you grow up and you leave home and when you come back to visit your parents, but you're right back in the same thing that you've always been in, you go right back to the most childish behaviors,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you are.
Mhm.
You know you've got a psychic contract with that individual. And so then it's really important for you to figure out what the contract is that you made with this individual. And it's not a contract that you verbalized or anything. This is all happening at the level of the unconscious. And once you understand what the contract is, you can cut it,
Mhm.
right? So the contract is you behave X, Y, and Z, and then I do X, Y, and Z back.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so once you've figured that out, you can cut it by going into a meditative place, altering your state of consciousness, and choosing to cut the cords. And when you do, there's a whole process behind it. So what you do is you sit in meditation with your eyes closed, you visualize your offender coming into the room, and then you look with your third eye where are the cords. And you may find there's cords coming out of your heart, into their heart, or it could be out of your gut, it could be out of your third eye, it could be out of your joints. You could be just covered with cords, like you're completely all tied up, or there just maybe one giant one coming out of your gut. And the problem with cording is that when you have a contract with someone and you're corded, your negative psychic energy, this deceptive psychic energy that you're doing where you're not authentic, you're not being real with that person. There comes a time when, if your dad has behaved badly to you all your life and now you're in your 30s, there comes a time when you got to say, Dad, I don't accept this behavior anymore. You
Mm-hmm.
will not treat me like this. If you keep treating me like this, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
Right? And that's love,
Yeah.
because the other way is enabling. I'm going to enable you to do your bad behavior forever,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just keep coming around
Yeah.
and take it some more. Um, and so once you become mature enough to put a stop to your part of the behavior, you can't ever change anybody else, but you can change yourself. Then you're mature enough to cut the cord. So you go into a meditative state, you close your eyes, you see what's there, making it up and just pretending, using your imagination. Oh my God, there's a cord totally wrapped around my neck, and I can't ever say my truth because, my mom just was screaming at me all the time and just shot me down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you look at that cord and you say to your offender in meditation, this is what you did to me, and this is how I behaved in return. Now I have this cord, it's choking me, it's giving me diseases in this area of my body, right? And I have the right and I have the maturity now to cut this cord. So you're verbalizing in a very clear way, this is going to end, and I'm the one that's going to end it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not dependent on your abuser ending it. And so you come in, you pretend you've got a visible, a magical sword in your hand, a sword of light, or just your arm, and you cut that cord. You take it, if it's around your neck, you take it out and you saw on it, till you let it, And when you're in meditation, you want these things to be emotional. You want to really get into the feeling of them, because they're much more powerful and much more impactful. I'm cutting all these cords. I'm getting off and pushing them away from me, right? And then once you have done that, you can see the cords between the two of you just beginning to evaporate, to disappear. And then your offender goes away as well, because there's nothing connecting the two of you anymore. The only thing that was connecting the two of you was this weird game that you two were playing with each other, this inauthentic game.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And of course, you develop these behaviors in childhood, but they're probably the exact same behaviors you had before.
Yeah.
In another lifetime. And so once they have disappeared, then you look at your energy field. So we have this whole field of energy around us, right?
Mm-hmm.
You begin with your imagination, with your eyes closed. You look, are there rips and tears in my energy field? And you better believe, if you had a lot of cords, there's a lot of rips and tears in your energy field, because it's like you're a battered human being.
Right.
Right? And that battering creates all these rips and tears. And that's when you do a meditative process and ask your guides, your angels, your higher self, any celestial beings that you're really attached to, like Christ, or whatever. You ask them to come. I need you to help me heal and repair my energy field.
Mm.
And you will see that they'll come. You don't need to see them as like in the shape of humans. They may just come in as in the shape of an orb of light or something of that nature. You might just sense them coming, and energy work is their specialty. So you will see them repairing your energy field. You will see the rips and tears being closed up, the gap being closed. Maybe you'll have an imaginary visualization in which they're taking a needle and thread and just sewing it up. It's just whatever. I mean, the magical part of this journey into higher consciousness is that you learn that all of the healing comes through the visualizations, through your imagination, because this is a powerful meditation that evokes a lot of emotion. When you've done this right, when you've done all the inner work to see, okay, this is the contract. I've been playing this inauthentic game for a zillion years now, right?
Yeah.
It's time for me to act like a grown-up and put an end to it. That has, there's a lot of emotion in that. And when you're cutting the cords, maybe with a parent that you love, but you've got some kind of weird behavior pattern going on between the two of you. So there's a lot of emotion around that. And then you imagine the beings who are here to guide you, the beings who love you, because
Mm.
these unseen beings are here to help you. They love you. They want to be of service. They want you to ask them, do
Mhm.
this for me. I need your help. I can't do this on my own. And
Mm.
so you imagine it, you visualize it, you pretend it, you make it up. And I guarantee you, when you're done with this meditation, you will be changed.
Mhm.
Now, that doesn't mean your behavior is going to automatically stop, or the automatic thoughts that lead to that behavior is going to stop, but you're going to become more aware, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm thinking those thoughts again.
Mhm.
I'm doing that behavior again,
Yeah.
right? There's a lesson in the Course in Miracles that says, I rule my mind, which I alone must rule.
Mm.
No one can change your thinking but you. And
Mhm.
you can't change your thinking if you're not aware of what you're thinking.
Mm.
So this is a way of becoming super aware
Yeah.
and making a decision. I'm not playing this game like this anymore,
Mm.
right? If I have to mirror to my mom or my dad what they're doing, what harm they're causing, well, you can do that when you're a grown up in a way that you can't do it when you're a child.
Yeah.
And it's your responsibility when you're a grown up to do that. Otherwise, you're enabling, and that's not love. So those are all the things that are in the dark matrix of limitation and pain, right? So it's a lot of negative stuff that's going on, starting from our genetics onto childhood behaviors that we develop, then adolescent, an inner demon that's given to us, dark law that we create in adolescence after what's called a wounding, and um, and then the psychic contracts, right? That's a and the bottom line, and then the psychic contracts. Well, that's a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And Yvette, as we talk about this and you begin to reflect upon it, this is everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
It's everywhere. All your friends, your parents,
Yeah.
in you.
Yeah, there's examples of everybody. I mean, even growing up from my whole 19 years of living, I've seen it probably every single year.
Right,
Yeah.
every single day in somebody, and
Mm.
done it yourself in some way or another,
Yeah.
right? And the problem is that nobody's conscious of this.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I said, we make a movie called The Dark Matrix, but it's all about kickboxing. It's not
Yeah.
like
Yeah. It's like that's not what it really is supposed
that's
to be.
not what it's all about, you guys.
Yeah.
This is what it's about,
Yeah.
because this has a very low vibration, and everything in it. I'm pointing at my notes here. I always teach from my notes.
Mhm.
Has a very low vibration. And if you are doing these things, you will attract someone, guess what?
Mhm.
Who's doing them too.
Yeah.
This is why people don't stay together, why, 2/3 of people who marry get divorced.
Yeah.
This is what destroys family. This is how parents destroy their children,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, and it's rampant, widespread. And how are we ever going to evolve as a society if people don't know these things?
Mm. Yeah. And
We,
it's it's everybody's on their own path too. That's why, there's a lot of conflict is because nobody there's very rarely a time where people think the same way, or they are on the same path in life, or they have the same opinions. And most people that you're around, you would don't attract people that share the same ideas as you until you're aware of your what you actually believe in that aren't
Right,
erroneous beliefs.
right,
Yeah.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's my opinion that this stuff should be taught in high school,
Yeah, I think so too.
that every senior should have to master this before they get out of high school so
Yeah.
that they can. So here's another thing that happens. So you've evolved and you have worked on your stuff. So this is your stuff to work on.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm doing that negative script. Oh, there's my inner demon. There's my, whatever. And decide I'm not behaving that way anymore.
Mhm.
So what happens? And now you've fallen in love and you got together with somebody else, and pretty soon they're doing the dark law. They're
Mhm.
doing the negative script,
Right.
and you see it.
Mhm.
What happens?
Either you try to fix them, which you can't, um,
Right. But that's
or
a popular one.
right, yeah, that's another, belief that is manipulation and whatever, it's negative.
Right.
Either you try to fix them or you leave.
Those are the only things that you can do. So what's going to happen is that when that happens, now you've fallen in love, and then you go, well, that's a red flag,
Mhm.
right? But most people say, well, I can, we can fix that, I can help them change.
Yeah.
Nobody changes for you.
Right.
We only change for ourselves,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're the one who's pointing it out, then you're the one who is causing them pain and suffering.
Mhm.
They don't want to hear it, and they think the problem is in you
Yeah.
because you're a nag.
Yeah, you're the one that thinks that there's things wrong with me. I think I'm perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So at a certain level, you tell yourself when your maturity level's high enough, you go, I don't think I better get any more involved with this person
Mhm. Yeah.
because this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do once you've been started to have sex with somebody, because
Yeah.
when you start to have sex with somebody, you're not thinking with your brain anymore. You
Mhm.
got all these hormones that are interfering.
Yeah.
Um, but my experience is that you come to this conclusion quicker and quicker. It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
is not going to work out. I don't want to encourage this relationship to go in that direction at all.
Yeah.
So that's how we change our reality. And hopefully, the goal is, I mean, right now it's really hard because most people are unconscious.
Mhm.
They don't know these things, so they don't know how to look at themselves from a higher level and create these changes. But eventually, as our world evolves, and hopefully you and I can have something to do with that, Yvette,
Yeah.
as our world evolves, there will be more and more people who know these things
Yeah.
and who take responsibility. And then those will be the people that you want to be in relationship with.
Right.
And in the meantime, it's kind of been a lonely trip for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. The spiritual journey, it's a lonely one, but it's a rewarding one.
Well, if you don't go on it, your life's going to be a disaster. It's better
Yeah.
to deal with the loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd rather be alone and happy than surrounded by a bunch of people. Because even when you are surrounded by a bunch of people, but you're not happy, you still feel alone.
Yes, that's exactly right. You can be in a relationship and feel more lonely than ever if
Yeah.
the relationship is not rewarding to you.
Right.
Now, one of the classes that I'm going to teach in this series is going to be on how to do meditative visualization
Mm.
and to really begin working with your higher self and your guides and angels in an altered state.
Mm.
And uh, that's where all the healing happens. This part is getting it into the mind. So this is the masculine energy. The masculine energy is about the intellect, right? And thinking. So we want to become conscious observers, and we can't become conscious observers if we don't know what to observe,
Mm.
right? So this class and last week's class helped you understand what to consciously observe.
Right.
Then you have to go through the difficult part, which is called shadow work, where you're looking at what are my negative scripts.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the end of class 2.
Mm.
And next week's class will be on the soul's path, which is a really, really magical class.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Bye.
Bye.